Little Crow's War. Almost 1,000 miles north of Navajo country, during the white men's Great Civil War, the Santee Sioux were losing their homeland forever. The Santees, comprised of 4 divisions, the Mdewkantons, Wahpetons, Wahpekutes, and Sissetons, were woodland Sioux, but maintained strong ties and shared a profound tribal pride with their blood brothers of the prairies, the Yankton's and Tetons. The Santees were the people of the farther end, the frontier guardians of the Sioux domain. During the 10 years preceding the Civil War, more than 150,000 white settlers encroached upon Santee country, collapsing the left flank of the once permanent Indian frontier. As a result of 2 deceptive treaties, the woodland Sioux surrendered 9/10 of their land and were crowded into a narrow strip of territory along the Minnesota River. From the beginning, agents and traders hovered around them like buzzards around the carcasses of slaughtered buffalo, systematically cheating them out of the greater part of the promised annuities for which they had been persuaded to give up their lands. Many of the white men often abused the Indians and treated them unkindly. Perhaps they had an excuse, but the Indians did not think so. Many of the whites always seemed to say by their manner when they saw an Indian, "I am better than you," and the Indians did not like this. There was an excuse for this, but the Dakotas did not believe there were better men in the world than they. Then some of the white men abused the Indian women in a certain way and disgraced them. And surely there was no excuse for that. All these things made many Indians dislike the white.
If you found this perspective insightful, please like and subscribe. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and allows us to bring more content like this to you.
In the summer of 1862, everything seemed to go badly between the Santees and the white men. Most of the wild game was gone from the reservation land, and when the Indians crossed into their old hunting grounds now claimed by white settlers, there was often trouble. For the second year running, the Indians' crop yields were poor, and many of them had to go to the agency traders to obtain food on credit. The Santees had learned to hate the credit system because they had no control over the accounts. When their annuities came from Washington, the traders held the first claim on the money, and whatever amount the traders claimed in their accounts, government agents would pay them. Some of the Santees had learned to keep accounts, and although their records might be less by many dollars than the traders' accounts, the government agents would not accept them. Taoya Teduta, or Little Crow, became very angry with the traders during the summer of 1862. A chief of the Mdewkantons, like his father and grandfather before him, Little Crow had signed both the treaties that tricked his people out of their land and the money promised for it. He had been to Washington to see the Great Father, President Buchanan. He had exchanged his breechclouts and blankets for trousers and brass-button jackets. He had joined the Episcopal Church, built a house, and started a farm. But during the summer of 1862, Little Crow's disillusionment was turning to anger. In July, several thousand Santees assembled at the upper agency on Yellow Medicine River to collect their annuities, which were pledged by the treaties so that they might exchange them for food. The money did not arrive, and there were rumors that the Great Council in Washington had expended all their gold fighting the Great Civil War, and could not send any money to the Indians. Because their people were starving, they begged the traders for provisions on credit until the annuities arrived. The traders, however, refused.
"If they are hungry, let them eat grass or their own dung."
This cruel remark fanned the flames of discontent among the Santees. Little Crow, along with other leaders, was incensed by the traders' callousness and the persistent injustices his people faced. He knew that starvation and humiliation were pushing the Santees to a breaking point. In August 1862, a group of young Santee warriors, enraged and desperate after a failed hunt, killed several settlers near Acton, Minnesota. This act of violence set off a chain reaction. Little Crow, despite his previous attempts to live peacefully with the white settlers, understood that the time for negotiation had ended. Reluctantly, he agreed to lead his people in a fight to reclaim their homeland and their dignity. On August 18, 1862, the Dakota War of 1862, also known as the Sioux Uprising, began. Little Crow led the Santees in a series of attacks against the white settlements and military outposts in the Minnesota River Valley. The conflict was brutal and swift. The Santees, driven by years of mistreatment and now the immediate threat of starvation, fought fiercely. Initially, the Santees had some successes, overwhelming small garrisons and capturing supplies. However, the United States government quickly mobilized a larger and better armed military response. The conflict lasted for 6 weeks, resulting in heavy casualties on both sides. Ultimately, the Santees were overwhelmed by the superior numbers and firepower of the United States military. The aftermath of the war was devastating for the Santee Sioux. Over 1,000 were captured or surrendered. In a series of hasty trials, hundreds were sentenced to death for their participation in the uprising. President Abraham Lincoln, after reviewing the trial records, commuted the sentences of most but allowed 38 men to be hanged in Mankato, Minnesota, in the largest mass execution in United States history. They sang the Sioux death song until soldiers pulled white caps over their heads and placed nooses around their necks. At a signal from an army officer, the control rope was cut and 38 Santee Sioux dangled lifeless in the air. The surviving Santees were forcibly removed from Minnesota to reservations in South Dakota and Nebraska, far from their ancestral lands. Little Crow fled but was later killed by a settler. The once proud guardians of the Sioux domain were scattered, their spirit broken by the relentless expansion of white settlers and the uncompromising policies of the United States government. The Dakota War of 1862 and its aftermath marked a tragic chapter in the history of the Santee Sioux, a testament to their resilience in the face of overwhelming adversity and the harsh realities of 19th century American expansionism.
The story of the Santee Sioux is not just a historical account. It is a poignant reminder of the enduring impact of colonization and the fight for justice and recognition. As we reflect on the struggles and resilience of the Santee Sioux, let us remember the importance of acknowledging these histories and advocating for the rights and dignity of Indigenous communities today. For a deeper understanding of the broader context and continued struggles of Native American tribe. This is an adaptation of Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee by Truth Vision Channel. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. Until next time, stay curious and compassionate.